A family opened a small roadside inn on the American frontier. Travelers could stop for a hot meal, buy supplies, rest their horses, and spend the night before continuing west. But some of those travelers were never seen again. Welcome to the Unexplained and Paranormal Report, where we investigate mysterious events, hauntings, strange encounters, and everything unexplained. For years, people vanished along the lonely roads of southeast Kansas. There were few witnesses, almost no clues, and seemingly no connection between the missing. Until one disappearance changed everything. The American frontier promised opportunity, but it also carried enormous risk. In the early 1870s, thousands of settlers traveled west through Kansas searching for land, work, and a new life. Many carried cash, tools, livestock, and nearly everything they owned. If someone disappeared on those isolated roads, it could take days, or even weeks before anyone realized they were missing. Along the Osage Trail near Cherryville, Kansas, stood a small cabin owned by 4 people who called themselves the Bender family. There was John Bender Sr., Elvira Bender, John Jr., and Kate Bender. At least that was the story they told their neighbors. Even today, historians aren't entirely sure they were actually related. Some believe John Jr. and Kate were husband and wife pretending to be brother and sister. Others questioned whether any of the names they used were real. Whatever the truth, they had chosen the perfect location. Their cabin sat beside one of the busiest trails in the region. It functioned as a general store, a small inn, and a place where exhausted travelers could eat and rest before continuing their journey. To anyone passing by, it looked completely ordinary. But inside, investigators would later discover clues suggesting the cabin had been carefully arranged for a far darker purpose. A large canvas curtain divided the room into 2 sections. Customers remained on one side, and the family lived behind the other. Guests invited to dinner were reportedly encouraged to sit in one particular chair with their back against the curtain. It seemed like an ordinary place to sit. It wasn't. Each member of the family appeared to play a different role. John Sr. reportedly spoke very little English and generally kept to himself. Elvira described by neighbors as intimidating and unpleasant. John Jr. became known for strange behavior and nervous laughter. But Kate was different. She was friendly, charismatic, and reportedly attractive. More importantly, she claimed to possess supernatural abilities. Kate advertised herself as a spiritualist and a faith healer. She claimed she could communicate with the dead, perform seances, and cure illnesses through supernatural means. People traveled specifically to meet her. Looking back, investigators believe trust may have been one of the family's greatest weapons. According to investigators and later historical accounts, once a traveler was seated, Kate often kept the guest engaged in conversation while another member of the family waited silently behind the curtain. Then, without warning, the attack came from behind. Investigators concluded the victims were first struck in the head before their throats were cut. A trapdoor beneath the floor allowed the bodies to be lowered into a small cellar hidden from anyone traveling the road outside. After dark, the bodies were reportedly buried in shallow graves around the property. If investigators reconstructed the events correctly, it was a chillingly efficient system. Quick, quiet, and almost impossible for unsuspecting travelers to anticipate. But according to several accounts, not everyone who entered the Bender cabin became a victim. One traveler named William Pickering reportedly stopped for a meal and was invited to sit in the chair beside the curtain. Something didn't feel right. Instead of taking the seat, he refused. Members of the family allegedly became unusually persistent, repeatedly encouraging him to move. His suspicion only grew stronger. Rather than arguing, Pickering simply left the cabin. Another often repeated account involves Father Paul Ponziglione, a Catholic priest traveling through the area. According to the story, he noticed movement behind the curtain and realized someone appeared to be hiding there, and he also escaped. Whether every detail of those stories is completely accurate is impossible to know today, but they all suggest the same disturbing possibilities. The Benders weren't committing random murders, they had created a system. And that system may have continued much longer if they hadn't chosen one victim whose disappearance attracted the attention of one of the most powerful men in Kansas. That victim was Dr. William York. In the spring of 1873, Dr. York was traveling through southeastern Kansas while searching for a missing neighbor and the man's young daughter. During his journey, he stopped at the Bender property. he never returned home. His disappearance immediately drew far more attention than previous cases. Dr. York wasn't just another traveler passing through. His brother, Colonel Ed York, helped organize the search, while another brother, Alexander York, was a Kansas state senator. Unlike many missing travelers, William York had influential people determined to find him. The York brothers retraced William's route, questioning residents and businesses along the Osage Trail. Eventually, they arrived at the Bender cabin. The family admitted that Dr. York had stopped there for a meal, but insisted he had continued on his journey without incident. At first, there was little evidence proving otherwise. Still, something didn't feel right. As concern over the growing number of disappearances spread throughout the region, local residents held a community meeting. A decision was made. Every isolated homestead in the area would be searched. The Benders reportedly attended that very meeting. If they did, they knew exactly what a search of their property would uncover. Only days later, neighbors noticed something strange. The cabin was empty. The family's livestock had been left behind, food sat untouched. The Benders had vanished. Investigators entered the deserted cabin expecting answers. Instead, they discovered a mystery that was even darker. A foul odor filled the building. Beneath the floor, they found a trapdoor leading into a small cellar. The cellar itself contained no bodies, but investigators found blood-stained soil and signs that something terrible had happened there. Attention soon turned outside. Using metal rods, searchers began probing the garden and orchard surrounding the cabin. Then they made the first horrifying discovery. A shallow grave. Inside was the body of Dr. William York. Investigators determined he had suffered a fatal blow to the head before his throat was cut. As the search continued, another grave appeared, then another, and another. Body after body was uncovered around the property. Among the victims was a father and his young daughter. According to contemporary reports, the little girl showed no obvious head injuries, leading investigators to speculate that she may have been buried alive, though historians continue to debate exactly what happened. By the time the excavation ended, at least 8 bodies had been recovered from the Bender property, while other disappearances from the region were widely suspected to be connected. The true number of victims may never be known. Some estimates have grown far higher over the years, but historians cannot confirm them. Whatever the final total, the discovery shocked the nation. The quiet roadside inn had become one of the most infamous crime scenes in American history, but the killers were already gone. A massive manhunt followed. Posses searched throughout Kansas and neighboring states. Reward money was offered. Dozens of people claimed to have seen the family. Several suspects were arrested over the years, but none could be conclusively proven to be the Benders. Stories soon began spreading. Some claimed the family escaped by wagon before splitting up. Others believed they boarded a train under assumed names. One popular legend suggests vigilantes eventually tracked them down and killed them in secret. Another claimed Kate and John Jr. fled west, started new lives, and escaped justice entirely. Despite countless rumors, no theory has ever been proven. More than 150 years later, no one knows with certainty what became of the bloody Benders. The cabin is long gone, but the story remains one of the darkest chapters in frontier history. It's also a reminder of how dangerous life on the American frontier could be. Travelers often placed complete trust in strangers because they had little choice. For most people who stopped at the Bender Inn, it seemed like another ordinary place to eat, rest, and continue west. And for some, it was the last place they would ever see. Whether every detail passed down over generations is completely accurate remains a matter of historical debate. But the discovery of the graves, the disappearance of the Bender family, and the unanswered questions surrounding their fate are all very real. Perhaps that's what makes this case so enduring. Not just the murders, but the fact that one of America's most notorious families may have disappeared forever. Do you think the bloody Benders escaped and lived out the rest of their lives under new identities? Or do you believe someone eventually caught up with them long before the law ever could? Let me know what you think in the comments.